Let's see. Ember Maiden is next. I like her. Oh, that's cool. So, again, the weapon is a pick. It's a war pick. So, again, framing. The burning village is over here, but over here we have the trees giving way to this open field of sky, which then becomes the frame for the character to be contrasted against. You can see she stands out very strongly from that background. What I love about this picture is the acting, like her attitude. Just chin up, like lips pouting, almost like she's a moody teenager, like walking out of an argument with her parents or something. It's like, man, that'll show you to tell me to stay home from Coachella. And then dragging this giant burning spiked club out of the wreckage of the burning buildings with the little specks of fire burning in her mohawk still. That's really cool. I like the acting on this. That's pretty funny. But again, the same thing, like the lighting of the fire of the village being used to highlight the character and so on and so forth. Deal 1 damage to everything. Oh, that's going to be good with Vladimir decks. Let's see. The Wolf Rider is another new one, I think. Yes. So here, I like this wolf. This is Mar Studio. That's a studio we haven't run into yet, I think, or at least I didn't notice. That's another one of the studios that have been doing illustrations for Legends of Runeterra is Studio Mar. And they, too, you can tell they have a different painting aesthetic than a lot of the other studios have, too. We don't have a character's face to focus on, but I really like this wolf face. Like, I like the wrinkle, like the real snarl that's going on in these completely cartoonish... It almost has kind of a Warcraft 3 aesthetic a little bit, like that particular style of, like, Warcraft in the olden days, when it was a little bit more on the cartoony side. Which I think is very cool. So this is a bunch of Winter's Claw raiders raiding an Aberosan village, I believe. And again, theoretically, the rider is the main character in the piece here. Theoretically, it's the rider, but when you look at the full composition, the main character really is the wolf. And they're both highlighted with the same, like, golden light of, well, fiery raid at dawn. But the wolf has, like, this huge prompt, like, fully half of the picture is pretty much dedicated to the front of the wolf itself. So in the card art, the wolf rider is the main character, but in the splash art, the wolf itself becomes the main character of the piece, with the rider basically playing second banana to this large and fuzzy boy. Let's see. Next up, Ursine's Spirit Walker. So again, you can see the composition happening a little bit here with, like, basically just the environment, the curvature of this, creating this wide field of open sky, against which he's contrasted with the shock white of his, like, Ursine coat, as well as the fact that he's just more saturated in his colors, especially those blue claws that he's swiping through the air in anger, and the glowing eyes drawing attention to him. But also, subtly, look at the clouds here, like the clouds, these circular clouds, the lines that they draw, like if you drew a line through them, all of them point you towards him as well, which again helps make him the center of attention in the image itself. So the Ursine are something that I imagine we're probably going to get more lore about once Volibear finally comes out. And I'm going to be disappointed with the Volibear rework, because they didn't go with, like, the horrifying eldritch monstrosity thing that they wrote him into being in Udyr's story. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers, and Volibear mains wanted something different, which leads us on to the Stormclaw Ursine, which is, like, his ascended form. Presumably that's what he's transforming into. Like, in this scene, he's transforming into this version of himself. Where here you can see the Dutch angle makes sense. Here's where a Dutch angle actually adds something to the mood of the piece, because this guy is shattering the earth, throwing everything around him in a fit of rage. And so it's perfectly appropriate that we are completely off balance, off center, like falling down and trembling before his might. One detail I do like, one little eldritch horror thing that they've kept. He has a second mouth inside his main mouth. A human mouth that screams. Which, like, that's a good detail. That's like some alien shit right there. Which again helps emphasize this idea that he's wearing the bear as a second skin over his own body. Which is terrifying. And also the other thing, like, here he's wearing these wooden antlers. You can clearly see they're, like, strapped to him or something like that. But here, it looks a lot more like they're growing out of his back, which was something that was also teased a little bit in like, the Volibear story that we got in Udyr's updated lore. Also had him, like, building spires of dead wood to, like, spear the bodies of his enemies on. Which I thought was, like, a really cool idea that seems to be kind of being brought out a little bit here with the tree branches also, like, they're like lightning bolts, you see? Like, with their zigzagging and their sharp lines, they look like lightning bolts as well, which, again, I suppose is to honor the war god, the lightning god, the bear. Again, lots of motion blur being used to emphasize the power of his roar. You can even see it creating little speed lines in the environment all around him, and the cracks and stuff in the earth, all of it drawing you to him as the undeniable center of the image. Let's see, the last thing is the Tusk Raider, which, yeah, it draws us to Johnny. I thought it might. Let's go, lesbians! So, just a crew of powerful warrior women, which I definitely appreciate. And I also appreciate that, look at the girl up here. She's got an actual waist that seems to be able to contain abs. The same thing goes for this lady right here. Actual waists that can contain muscle, which I appreciate. This lady is a little thin for me, but, you know, whatever. But yeah, compositionally, here we have a frame that's created by the two warriors out on the sides, create this, like, especially between their swords, creates this space for the Tusk Raiders, like, long neck to kind of burst into. And then we have the torches of the warriors who are still on the ship, creating this light and contrast with the rest of the environment, drawing our attention there. And here, again, the Dutch angle seems to be... I feel like the Dutch angle is actually fully unnecessary, because, like, it's kind of about creating more space for the lady warrior on the left, but, like, it's a little much. I feel like this composition might be stronger with, like, a more, like, not a completely horizontal angle, but a slightly more horizontal angle. Right, that was the last of the Freljord cards, I think, which means it's time to move on to Ionia. And here, first one we're dealing with is Lee Sin, who is fairly ripped, isn't he? Good lord. Like, he looks so awkward in-game, like his character model is so weird and spindly and odd. And then you look at him in a card art, and he's like brick shithouse right there. So, again, much of the same stuff that we've talked about before. The tree in the foreground here, as well as the ground, creates a little bit of a frame, like creating a space here for him to occupy, and then the light of the magic jar things that he's got, as well as this mystical light that seems to be coming from below, which is golden, frames him out against the blue and the purple and the dark greens of the background, creating like this zone of light that he occupies, making him backlit into the environment. I see people talking daddy in chat already. Yes, I believe that may be the intentional point of this particular version of him. I do like that they've made his ponytail so long that he can wrap it around his own neck and kind of wear it like a scarf. That's pretty cool. Anything else interesting here? No, I mean, I like the little glowy berries on the tree here, or the bush. I don't know what they are, but it's cool that there's magic berries growing there, or something. And then again, this is kind of like a Sejuani situation where we have a very calm, quiet energy in the first version of her, and then second version is him in full anime action mode, just kicking people in the head. Specifically, he seems to be fighting members of Set's Cult of Shadows. Order of Shadows, rather. And he kicks this guy so hard that his head just bursts open like the Invisible Man. And he falls over. So, again, Lee Sin is lit. Literally lit. Lit up by the sunlight coming from the back here. All of his opponents are much more shadowed and much more subdued. There's a frame being created by the body of the one falling opponent and the other opponent that's confronting him that creates a frame for Lee Sin to exist inside. And then, of course, Lee Sin is just way more colorful than they are. So all of the same stuff we talked about before being deployed in the same way. Let's see. Claws of the Dragon would be next. Lady, you have so much muscle on your back. Where the hell is your waist? No, I will never shut up about it. I know your mileage may vary. It's a personal preference thing, but this is too much stylization for me. Anyway, again, I don't have a lot to add to the points we've already discussed, except that here, there's two frames. First, there's the frame of the mountains, right? Creating this space here for her to occupy, but then there's the frame of the light of the full moon, which creates a frame for her head and her upper torso to occupy, so that your eye is drawn here first, then you see the rest of it, and then you go out and you search for the details around the periphery, with these cool-ass looking claw weapons that she is swinging around, and I guess she's supposed to be Spider-Manning her way across the mountainside or something? I'm not really sure. One thing that's not very good about this piece, I think, is I'm not clear on what her action here is supposed to be. Like, is she swinging on the ropes? Is she, like, doing martial arts practice? Where is the ground relative to her? Is she high up in the air, or is she really close to the ground with these cliffs here? There's a lack of clarity to the action that I feel like could probably be fixed a little bit. But other than that, like, most of the same things we've discussed already are still in action right here. I like the pink of the leaves here being used to create a little bit of a color contrast with much of the environment, which also gives a little bit more of a feeling of a lively environment rather than just, like, static mountains. Then we have this cutie. Tiny, adorable little ninja baby. Or monk baby. Girl. Something. So all of these, by the way, the Eye of the Dragon, the Claws of the Dragon, and the last one, who is somewhere down here, Scales of the Dragon, are connected to Lee Sin, and they all, like, interact with his kit in one way or another. But yeah, similar situation, like, the cliffside and the place that she's, like, the waterfall that she's sitting by creates the framing of the character that helps, like, balance the composition to favor her, highlighting the character, and then we have this lovely little dragon thing that kind of coils and curls around her, which also helps emphasize her centrality to the image. But it's also just like a really nice dynamic detail in the picture. And notice here that we don't have a Dutch angle. Finally, we don't have a Dutch angle, which I think is nice because she's sitting there meditating. She's contemplating. It's a calm, quiet, peaceful moment where everything is at rest. And she's contemplating the magic of the thing that she's holding on to and so on. I think Lee Sin's base also had... Yeah, it also had a flat angle for the same reason. Like a Dutch angle here would create this sense of energy and movement and chaos that a scene like that just doesn't need. It's the same thing with the Inspiring Mentor. No Dutch angles in sight. And then there's her Dragonling, which apparently doesn't get its own card. Oh well. Let's see. Scales of the Dragon. There you are. Some anime bullshit going on here, which is lovely. And again, the frame here is being created by his magic dragon. I swear to God, if his line in game isn't Ryuga Wagateki Wakurao, then they have missed an opportunity. But again, the ethereal magic snake thing here, dragon tattoo, helps section off his side of the image, then along with the flames and the burning trees in the background, creates like the framing device for the dude in the foreground. I feel like the snake is a little bit like, it just looks like he drew the snake and then made it transparent. Maybe screen filtered it over. I don't know. Something about this doesn't look like a magical spectre. It looks more like a visual effect from a kung fu movie from the 80s. Which maybe that's the point. Like, maybe that's the visual reference it's supposed to make, that it's like literally like a double exposure thing which is how they used to do the magic effects back in those days. But yeah, much of the same stuff we've talked about already, much of the same compositional techniques being used. Was that all of them? No, the horns. The horns is there as well. And here, interestingly, I don't think there's a clear frame going on. Like, you'd think there'd be one, like with this pillar here and that pillar there, creating a space for him to occupy. But I think the feeling that the artist is going for here is one of this guy being so powerful that he kind of bursts through. And you can see here that, like, he's being attacked by presumably ninjas from Zed's Order of Shadows, throwing shurikens at him to very little avail or use. So I think the feeling they want here is like this juggernaut-style unstoppable force kind of bursting out of any available frames that might contain him. And there's a cool aesthetic going on with his skin and like with the way his body is designed. Like you can see the hardness. He's a 4/6 with double attack. Good lord. You can see that he's like basically made of stone or rock, made of mountain, as someone says in chat. Just by the angular nature, like, look how angular everything, every little shape and surface on him. There's no softness there at all. It's just all sheer rock face, basically. And that seems to be it for Ionia, which means we can move on to Noxus. Let's see. Let's have a card list for Noxus so I can tell what I'm doing. And we'll start with the new champion. Get ready for more daddy in chat. There's Swain, commanding the Noxian Empire. Now, here's an interesting compositional thing, actually, because this composition is really, really unbalanced. And what I mean by that is that there's this huge weight of detail and just, like, stuff happening here between Swain and the feathers and the crows and the flying around. There's so much detail and like weight put in this side of the image that everything over here feels kind of insubstantial and flat. Not flat, floaty. A little bit. Like this doesn't really have the same monumental power. And I think that's a little bit of a problem here because the image, like the picture here, is Swain commanding the Noxian armies to attack, and he himself out in front. And I feel like with this, you would want more of a Sejuani vibe, where you could see like the vast armies of Noxus arrayed behind him, like with siege engines and powerful towers and stuff like that. Which it kind of looks like that's what they're trying to go for, but I just don't get that. Like this looks way too empty and like weak to really be supported by like Swain giving the command and his crows flying forth. Like there's an unbalancedness in this composition that I don't really like very much, which is not present at all in his leveled up form, where, oh, there's balance here, there's symmetry, in fact. And the symmetry here is being used to do two things. First of all, it makes Swain look like a terrifying avenging angel descending from on high to rain death and destruction upon his opponents down below, which is what's happening. It helps compositionally in that the wings both constitute lines that lead to him, along with like this split, this red dyed split in the clouds, blasting open, and Swain like standing in the rift like a demon out of hell. But also the symmetry of this image, like the perfect balancedness of this image, the symmetry gives a feeling of control. Like everything in this picture revolves around Swain. Swain controls what's happening here. All the lines on the ground lead back up towards him. It gives him this feeling of being in command and in power over what happens here, which works really, really well for the composition. Yeah, nothing there. Okay, next one would be the Imperial Demolitionist. Now, here's an anime girl, and this is Daolei again. Like, this is an anime girl. Like, this is so... Like, there's been some anime before, but this, for some reason, this one feels the most like an anime girl to me. Like an anime girl from one of those weird, fucked up anime where it's like cute anime girls, but they're fighting in, like, World War II and driving tanks and being shot at and shit like that. It feels like that to me. She's cute, but there's a weird clash between like the semi-cutesy aesthetic of the anime face and then like the fire and the brimstone and the burning and the jagged realism of the there's a weird clash there. I don't think it's necessarily a bad clash. Like I think it draws attention to itself in an interesting way, but it's a clash. Like it doesn't feel like it fits completely. But again, same discussion as before. We have all of these trees and plants and stuff in the foreground, creating a frame for her to occupy, and then we have the highlights on her body, highlighting her against the background itself. The only place where that fails a little bit would be like here. I would kind of have... like, maybe I would have de-emphasized the fire in the background here just in order to have that shine more brightly, but it still has the color saturation on the background, so it still stands out. It just could stand out a little bit more, is really the only thing I mean. Which leads us on to... is the Iron Ballista new? Yes, it is. So this one's a little boring. This one feels most like a magic card to me of all the cards in the set so far, in the sense that magic cards also have a tendency often to focus on, like, there's often inanimate objects in this way. Inanimate objects that are rendered in rather undynamic style. Because, you see, like, there's war elephants in the background, and there's Noxian soldiers running around, and there's arrows flying through the air, but the thing itself doesn't move. Like, nothing is really happening here. It's just standing there ready to fire, but it's very undynamic and kind of, to me, like, I know for a lot of people this stuff is really cool, but for me it's boring. Like, it doesn't really do much. It doesn't have a storytelling to it. It's just, it's standing there waiting to fire a thing. And it seems to be just one of many, so it's like... And again, this is one of those cards where it's like, it doesn't have to be cool or interesting because it's not a character. It's not a character, it's just a thing. So that's fine. Something better and more interesting, though, is the City Breaker. Like, this one's a little more interesting to me. If nothing else, because here we've got a Dutch angle, which we sort of... which, like, there's a little bit of one here, like, just a tiny little one, but it's also very stable with the line of the ballista itself. And that's where the City Breaker, because, like, the City Breaker isn't standing there ready to fire. The City Breaker has fired. Like, it has an action. It does something. The Dutch angle is a little bit more pronounced, and so, like, this feels a little bit more dynamic to me. Still boring, mostly. I mean, it's nice to notice that they're invading Ionia here, like, that's what's happening. But still not a very interesting illustration. Functional, perfectly functional, and, like, it does the job that it's supposed to do, but not something I have a lot to say about. This, on the other hand, now this is better. Armored Tusk Rider. This is still a war machine, essentially. Like, this is still a piece of war equipment. But here, because it's a character, it has action, it has movement, it has a thing that Tail of the Dragon! Shit, I missed the Tail of the Dragon. We'll go back to that in a second. This has action, this has movement. Like, there's the swoop of the giant tusks, which helps, like this biological form that comes out. But then just also the fact that it has, like, legs that it can move around, it has a head that can swivel and look at things, gives it much more of a dynamic feeling. Like, I think they could have pushed this even harder by having it, like, galloping rather than just kind of wandering forward. But this has much more energy to it, I think. Right. Tail. Where are you? There he is. He's behind a spell card. That's why we didn't get to him. Tail of the Dragon. So here, a really fun frame, like a really cool frame. He's dodging these spear attacks from these enemies that are attacking him. And you can see that he's framed by them. They create this triangular frame for his body to occupy. And that triangular shape, that that sharpness of that shape also kind of communicates the sharpness of him. Like, that he's about to take... Like, he's clearly about to do a spin kick or something and kick all of their asses in one go. But I really like that. I also like that he apparently seems to be mimicking Lee Sin's ponytail with this red rope that's coming, like, that's tied to the back of his hair back here. Kind of seems that he's kind of mimicking Lee Sin in that way. And again, the same highlight techniques that we've talked about before are being used here. There we go. That was the tail of the dragon. Back to Noxus. Is there anything left here, actually, come to think of it? I think Aura Glinthorn is new. Is he? Yes, he is. So, Minotaur General guy. Couple of cool things going on here. Like, first of all, same stuff as we talked about before. The sky behind him is bright, highlighted in pinks and golds and well, a little bit of blue up here, but mostly purple. And then he himself is very dark. Like, he's got this dark mottled skin going on, which has his own highlights with the gold of his armor. And then he has these banners, like the war banners. The ones he's got hanging off the back of him are pretty cool because they add a lot of interest to his character. But the one coming off his mace, like this, I think is exceptionally cool because this looks like blood. This looks like blood flowing from a mace that has freshly passed through some enemy's skull or something like that. You really get the feeling of like he's dragging this plume of blood through the air. That to me just looked really fucking cool. That's a bit of character design. And this right here has much more of the energy that I was looking for from the Swain card. This has much more of the energy of, like, he's commanding an army to move forward. You can see the might of Noxus, like, rallying behind him, stones flying through the air, giant war machines, soldiers flanking him. This has much more of that commander energy that I was looking for. Legs too small, to be honest. No, well, maybe. He's got these digit-grade feet, this, like, bovine back legs, like with these coiled, where maybe the thigh should be longer. It's a little unclear to me because I can't quite tell how he's standing there. And finally, the Leviathan, which is basically this card that summons Swain. That's what it does. And round start, deal 1 to the enemy nexus 3 times, which is just mean and evil. And again, much like the other War Machine cards, this one is like... It's cool. I like that it has these 3 smokestacks, making it look like a modern steamer, like a modern steamship or something like the Titanic almost has that kind of aesthetic. But it's also a very static... Like, it's not doing anything, it's just docking, and, like, war machines are coming out. Now, the scale is cool, because you have the scale of all of these tiny, tiny little soldiers, and even these giant war machine tower things are just dwarfed by the enormity of the Leviathan itself. But other than that, there's not much interesting to say about it. It stands out from its environment just by being stark black against an environment that's mostly bright. Piltover on, second to last region. We're getting there. And it's only been 3.5 hours. It does help that I feel like I've said everything that I needed to say. Kind of, like, I've talked about a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about already. Let's see. Shouldn't Vi be up here? Oh, yeah, right. I've already bought her. That's why. So, Vi has, like, just a massively cool champion splash art. Like, I really fucking love this. For 2 reasons. First of all, the dynamism. Like, it's a really, really dynamic artwork. There's lots of movement, there's lots of energy, like you can see the bricks from her running up the wall bursting out everywhere. There's like this chaotic energy going on even on the streets. And with the clotheslines and stuff like that, creating a lot of movement in the scene with this brick practically flying at the viewer themselves. Same thing that we've talked about multiple times before. With her, with the cards where she's highlighted by sunlight, where everything else that doesn't need to be looked at is mostly contained in shadow. But then there's also the visual storytelling of, this is Vi's personality, like, this is who she is, this is what she does collateral damage to everything, and she doesn't care, she's having fun. She runs up a wall, smashes buildings, leaves piles of bricks behind, and she doesn't care because she's about to punch someone right the hell in the face. As people are pointing out in chat, yes, Vi is a little bit too stick skinny to be wielding these giant power gloves. And like, you'd think she'd be, at least have some muscle definition or something. But that goes back to her original character design, so I can't really put that on 6 More Vodka this time around, because her original character design has those stick-thin arms as well, which is like, nah, that's the way it goes. As people have brought up multiple times, by the way, Vi has a neck tattoo on the same side as her face tattoo, right? And it's not easy to see here, but it just kind of pokes out over her collar there. And then we get to the second image for her, and the neck tattoo seems to have changed place. Now, the other thing that I would suggest is that maybe Vi has a neck tattoo on both sides of her neck. Like, could that maybe that's what's going on? I don't know if anyone's cross-referenced that with her original character model. Who knows? But either way, that's a thing people have been talking about. So again, very, very tiny waist. Like, there's a little bit of, like, remember how I talked about with Misfortune? Like, it's not really about the character being realistic. It's about the character feeling believable. So here, Vi has this completely ridiculously tiny little waist, right? Which, like, I think it's still too much because, again, Vi is a brawler. She's someone who fights for a living. She should have much more muscle definition. She should have a much tighter core. But because here we have this tight belt and this corset wrapped around her waist, it's, like, less uncanny to me because, like, instead of her just looking like she is that thin naturally, it looks like something is squeezing her really hard to make her that thin. Now, from a character design perspective, that still raises the question of why the fuck would she wear that? Like, Vi, the character who's all about breaking loose from boundaries and rules and not following, like, restrictions, why the fuck would she wear that? I don't know. Character design-wise, it's bad, but in terms of, like, the visual of the image itself, yeah, okay. Because, like, in real life, women can actually have waists that are that thin if they wear a really tight corset and a tight belt around it. I've seen that happen before. I've seen women who, like, do that for fun, and, like, that's part of their aesthetic. And it's cool that the human body can withstand that. It's also mildly terrifying. But it's a character design thing that I don't think works on Vi, but as a visual design thing, it does make it easier to accept the idea of this just paper-thin wasp waist. I feel like that's more of a Caitlyn thing, really, as someone's pointing out in chat. Like, I feel like it's way more of a Caitlyn thing to be wearing a corset like that, because Caitlyn is uptight, and Vi is not. So, you know, as character design, that would be a better... Anyway, the framing. The body of the man that she's punched the shit out of, as well as the rubble, and then the buildings themselves, you can see, create this frame for Vi to stand up in the middle of the image and kind of be framed by the sky itself. And I think we're seeing, I think the lady there who's holding on to someone down there is the same one that we've got in the background over here, something like that. Maybe, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, again, I love the visual storytelling here, which is that, like, she's she's brought so much chaos and destruction, and this guy right here is like, holy fucking shit, is absolutely terrified by what she's done, and there's so much broken brickwork and just people lying in bundles, and this poor dude smashed like a half a foot into the wall itself. And then Vi is just standing there in the middle like, what? I was doing my job. Like, not giving a shit, because she doesn't care, because she's Vi, and she's cool. And I like that. That works really well, especially for the character herself. So, I think the first one is the 2 cost. Where the hell is it? There he is, Veteran Investigator. Now there's a mustache on a yordle, isn't there? So, to the best of my knowledge, the Investigator cards all tell a unified story with the Patrol Wardens. See if I can find... Yeah, the Insightful Investigator. Like, this is the same scene, but we see it from different perspectives. Like, and we see, like, the big guy here being pointed in a certain direction is the same guy who's chasing... Here, who's chasing after Jinx in this image, I believe. So it's telling a unified story across multiple cards in that way. Let's see if we can find the last one. There is one more, right? Oh, no, that was all of them. Okay, cool. So let's start with the veteran investigator. So again, much the same stuff with like the sun being used to occlude the characters out there. You can see this is the same. The guy who's pointing the guy in the right direction is the same one that we see with the insightful investigator out here. That thing. So again, highlightings from the sunlight coming in from the roof overhead helps highlight the character, as well as this foreground object, like the barrel with this streak of fire cut across it. That kind of creates a foreground that he and the barrel or the box or whatever the heck this is all occupy together, while everything else is kind of bathed in this occluding, almost misty, dusty sunlight that kind of washes out all the details. So he stands out that way. More than by being brighter than the environment, he's slightly darker than his background environment. And then, like, just look at that mustache, man. That's a cool character design. Like, that's a character that has some personality to it, isn't it? Right, next up is the patrolman? Yeah, the patrol wardens. And then we have, like, clearly the person that they're chasing down is Jinx. And Jinx is not very far ahead because, like, she was just painting that right now, and she's dropping her paint cans as she's running off, like, just off screen, with the wardens trying to chase her down. And I really like the physical acting here. Like, I like the pose of the lady here who's, like, really leaning forward, like, 12 miles into the chase, fully in the run. And then the dude with the big cannon thing, or the siren, I guess it's a siren or something, just kind of loping after her because he's carrying this big thing with him. So he kind of has to have this more hunched over, kind of Flintstones-esque run where it's, like, his legs doing most of the work. But also, the dude... Like, look at him. He's looking at Jinx's artwork with like a, huh. Like that expression on his face is really good. I really like that. Warden Mear's sprinting technique was a running joke among other enforcers. Warden Keppel didn't get it. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so one spell I want to talk about, Vault Breaker, because here we have kind of... This is like the clearest possible demonstration of all that nonsense I've been blabbering on about light and color used to highlight an object. Here you can just really, like, this is the most extreme possible version of that, where you can see, yeah, Vi is there, but this is the subject of the image. Yeah, but most of the spells just aren't worth talking about, I think. So then there's this. With, like, the veteran investigator on the inside, we have Warden Keppel here being pointed in the right direction. And then we have, I don't know what her name is, this lady right here. And again, she is highlighted in the environment by being just simply darker than the rest of the environment. Like, she's got way more shade and shadow on her, where everything else is highlighted in this, like, late golden hour, dusty sunlight in the back. And then there's the framing. Where she doesn't have an explicit frame as such, but the perspective with the pier and like all the little lines, they're kind of leading into this wedge, this triangular wedge shape that she occupies, making her the center of the image. Plus, she's gorgeous. Like, again, it's I talk oftentimes when I talk about characterization and character design, I talk about unnecessary sexualization. Like, artists who just like, oh, here's a lady, I guess tits out and big ass, or like making them explicitly sexy in order to make them appealing and attractive. And like, you look at a character like this and go, actually, you can make a character look pretty freaking hot without doing that. Like, there are ways to make a character look attractive without necessarily just using sexualization as a default. Which is something I'd like to see more of, especially in video games, that they like expand their aesthetic reach of what can be used to make a character look appealing. Because it's not about sexy being bad, it's about, like, it should be doing something, it should have a function beyond just, ha make my pee hard. Chief Mechanist Zevi. At age 5, she made the world's first multi-frequency sonic knife. While not very practical, she mostly used it to slice sandwiches, it set her on the way to the Warden's elite armaments department. And presumably this is the lady who, among other things, maintains Vi's gloves and stuff like that, I would imagine. So here again, framing. Here she's framed by her own working rig, and the thing that she's working on, creating this little room right here for her to occupy, and then we have the light spilling out from the device that she's working on. Not really, like, not brightly highlighting her face, but creating this ghostly blue light that just does enough to bring attention to her. And look, she has muscle definition. She's not, like, mega buff or anything, but she has muscle definition. The kind that Vi really, really needs in her arms to look more plausible. So I love the visual storytelling here, that she has this rig, this robot thing, which like holds up blueprints and like holds a tool in place, and it gives her a cup of tea, and it gives her a spanner when she needs it. Like, it's doing, you get this sense of energy and movement that like while she's working, the rig is doing all these extra moves that are constantly bringing just the right thing into reach for her when she needs it. Anything she needs, whenever she needs it. And if you imagine this being animated like that, imagine the motion that the picture implies, but happening for real. You get it. I think this picture has such a really nice moving energy to it. That can be kind of hard to do with robots in static pictures, is to give them that sense of movement, that sense of personality to them. Because like the rig, it doesn't have a face, but it still kind of has a personality, doesn't it? Like with all those arms moving around. I think it's pretty cool. Was that the last one of Piltover? Yeah. That is the last one of Piltover Son, which moves us on to the very last region. We're almost done, my friends and fellows. Shadow Isles. And Maokai, who I'm terrified of. Like, I'm terrified of running into Maokai decks. I'm like, this is so scary. I don't want that. No. I'm never letting anyone level up with this goddamn card. I'm killing them first, I swear to God. I'm just gonna go full early aggro and go for their face all the time. That's what I'm gonna do. Anyway, Maokai. So, for some reason, and I haven't been able to articulate why, but for some reason, this version of Maokai looks less cool and kind of dynamic and interesting than the one we have in the submarine. What submarine? Did I miss one? That wasn't on my card list. What the hell? Oh, yes, it was. I just missed it. Okay. So this is a continuation of the cat mecha thing, Pursuit of Perfection thing. It's a continuation of that particular storyline with the kitty cat being used for mad science, and also doing mad science and trying to take over the world. It's Pinky and the Brain. Same techniques we've talked about before, with like a framing being used to create a space of visual interest in the middle here. Light coming in, highlighting the thing, etc., etc. Much of the same stuff, but I do love the cat's expression, like that determined, the humans will pay, they will all pay, like that angry look it has on his face. Anyway, kind of impressive that through all of this I've only forgotten like 2 cards. So anyway, what I was saying about Maokai, I just don't think he's that cool and dynamic. Like, I think maybe it's because, like, in his base splash art in League of Legends, like, it has a lot of emphasis on the giant, powerful arm that he's got, like, his big magic tree ant arm, and then you have this tiny, crippled, little, weak-looking arm instead that has this asymmetric scariness to it that I really kind of like. But here, he doesn't really have a dynamic pose very much. Like, he's just kind of standing there. And the lighting, which is the thing that's been done so well in so much of the rest of the sets of cards, the lighting is really flat here. Like, this just looks, it doesn't look like he's got a big hulking, like, shapely body, like this big knot of wood from which his giant head is poking. It just looks like it's kind of flat and his head is copy-pasted on there. Which is unusual, because so many of the other cards do this so well, and then Maokai comes along and he's just kind of... There's just not that much happening with him. which I think is a pity. Compositionally, though, same thing. We've got this little bit of a framing in the background with, like, the light coming in from behind and the trees. And then we have the spirits that are all, like, rushing towards or around Maokai, kind of creating, like, an energy in the image that all points towards him at the center. Which works very, very well compositionally, but just the character himself just isn't looking very good on this one. And it's kind of the same thing here. It's like, here he's pounding his fists into the earth, creating this splash of saplings and power and energy, and it's like compared to... No, not Ursine. Ursine. Like, compared to the energy in this, right? It's the same action, pretty much, but look how much more dynamic and active this piece is, and then you look at Maokai, and it's like... It looks really static. Like, it really doesn't look like very much is happening. It doesn't look like he's pounding his fist into the earth. It looks like he's touching his hand to the ground, gently almost. Which, like, this is a picture where a Dutch angle would have been more appropriate, like, where having that dynamic unbalancing would have been appropriate. This is a picture where I would have liked Maokai to lean much harder into what he's doing, like, to maybe distort the shape a little, like, to get some more energy in there, which is really kind of missing. Outside of that, same compositional tricks, like we have the blue light of Maokai contrasting with the green light of life that he's pouring into the earth, and a framing with, like, the trees and the bushes and the stuff around there, doing a decent job of framing the action, even if the character himself is just not compelling, I don't think. Sapling. Kind of the same thing going on that we've talked about 100,000 times already. With, like, the foreground being created by the tree trunk that it's sitting on here, as well as the light coming onto it, and the light coming from the sapling itself, creating much of the visual interest in the image and kind of pointing us towards looking at him primarily. I do like that he has these little... sapling buddies in the background, kind of these menacing little Joker faces that are just kind of hanging out and making the scene look more spooky. All right. Now, Thorny Toad, I think, is the first one, or Bark Beast, actually, no. So yeah, lots of Maokai associated cards, basically. So I do like the visual storytelling here that the Bark Beast has clearly been eating. Like, it's been sucking life or something out of this tree branch here that it's sitting on. So you've caught it right in the moment when it's eating. It looks a little bit like Cogmaw, doesn't it? Like, it has a little bit of that same aesthetic. So there's a good visual storytelling here, and the same thing applies. Like, we have the foreground being created by this tree trunk poking up into it, the creature itself taking up most of the space in the image, and then, like, a background that's contrasted nicely against the creature. And nothing else really interesting. I like the spiky design on it. Like, I like that it's both thorny and a bark beast. Like, it really looks like a combination of different kinds of plant features into something that looks like a monstrous creature. Let's see. And then there's the Thorny Toad, which has kind of the same aesthetic to it. Like, it's the same kind of... It's barky and kind of thick, but it's also got these spiky bark aesthetic to it, almost as though it's covered with thorns as well, which also is in the name Thorny Toad. Last breath, toss 2 and healing nexus 2. And again... It's highlighted, literally, by, like, this brighter patch of disgusting mud that it's wallowing in as it's, like, dragging itself out of the swamp. I like that there's a sword just kind of tossed on the ground and a skull buried in the mud, which kind of indicates that maybe he has eaten a few people before. And I do like the idea of, like, having this almost like a shell, like this upper lip on the thing that kind of almost covers the whole body. Like, that's just a cool design thing, because it makes it look a little turtle-like, as well as being this clearly horny toad creature with slime coming out. It's just appropriately disgusting. And again, relative bright light in the center of the image, and then all around the edges things get darker, which means we center our attention on here. The eyes being glowy with light draw attention to the face of the thing. Let's see, Blighted Caretaker should be next. There you are. Now, here's a character with some character. Here's something I really quite like. Because there's a story being told here, like there's a character interaction happening with this guy has like an Ivern energy, like, oh, hello, little creature of the forest. And then Maokai Sapling is just like, ah! It's just like screaming at him, like, fuck off! Which is just a nice little bit of storytelling. And here also, interestingly for the Shadow Isles, a little beam of sunlight, which is an unusual choice for a Shadow Isles card, because sunlight is a rare resource on those islands. A Meaningless Demon, yes, I know about the Subjectively videos, and I might do a video response to them at some point. But yeah, I do like this character design. Like, I like the use of, like, this bright crown of leaves and like, roots and branches being used to indicate hair. I like the gentle playfulness of her interaction with this screaming little shitbag that clearly doesn't want anything to do with her. Now, the wood titties are a little bit much. Like, if you absolutely... like, usually when you add titties to a creature that isn't human, it's because you want people to intuit that the creature is female. As a design decision, that's kind of what that's there for. I find it a little bit superfluous. Like, there's other ways to do that, but it's not a deal breaker for me as such. Like, it's fine. But what I do like is that she has the open maw on her belly, like Maokai has on his arm, like this other face with his grinning, terrifying mouth. And she also has that on her belly, and I kind of wish we could see her a little, like, if she had, like, a second she has this nice, pleasant, like, sort of friendly wood spirit face, and then she has a terrifying ghost face with, like, a jagged mouth on the stomach. That's a really cool kind of character design, and I kind of wish we could see more of that as well. But again, light being used to literally highlight the interaction between the two as the main center of the piece. And also, she summons just regular saplings? Yeah. And I think this is another new one. I got that one in my weekly chest, or my vault thing. So, a couple of bits of cool storytelling that I like here. I like the swords that are sticking out of its back. Like, that's such a common thing on monster designs, like, to show that it's been around for a long time and has killed a lot of enemies. That goes all the way back to Moby Dick, by the way. Where, like, the titular Dick, the titular Moby Dick, yes, I know, snicker about it in the chat, is described as having, like, harpoons stuck into it, like, broken off from years of long hunts and stuff like that. Am I remembering that right? I think I am. And that's the same thing here. Like, you can see all these swords and stuff stuck into it. You can see roots that have snaked out of the body and grown around the swords and spears, almost as if to say, like, nothing you do can kill me in a meaningful way. And the creature itself, again, this has this dark, warm, reddish-brown aesthetic thing going on, and everything else is blue and white and gray, mostly. And then more storytelling that it grows plants wherever it walks. Like, it's full of this life force, life energy. And it creates life where it walks, which creates this ambiguity where it's a terrifying monster on one hand, but on the other hand, it clearly also is good for the Shadow Isles in some respect or another. Oh, and this is by Slavomir Maniac, which I don't know if that's a person or a company. With apologies, like, I'm not familiar with what kind of name that is or where it's from, but it's another one of the outside contractors that are working with Riot on this particular game. Oh, shit. No. Hang on. Units. Right. Next one would be the Neverglade Collector. That's a 5 cost. Ah, there you are. Now we're in Cthulhu land. Ah, we're Cthulhu now, boys. We're Lovecraft now. That's a mind flayer. Like, that's just what that is. That's a mind flayer, though. Like, it's a mind flayer. When another ally drain one from the... Oh, god damn it. Don't ever play this against me. I hate you. But yeah, again, many of the same things that we've talked about before. The trees in the background create a compositional space for the character to occupy. The light of the magic that they're using draws our attention to them. I do like the character design detail that this creature didn't build this boat. Like, the boat was... It didn't build the boat, it infected the boat. Like, it sank into it and burst through it and took it over like a parasite. I like that detail. Like, as a little thing is like... Oh no, this is not... It's like an anglerfish almost. Like, it's clearly preying on people. As it says, like, he bumped into Niven, this new ferryman. He rowed us to... He can certainly hold a tune before, must invite him to supper soon. Recover journal. So, like, clearly this is someone who tempts visitors to the Shadow Isles and then drowns them and drains their life force. Something along those lines. Which leaves us with the overgrown snapvine. Oh no. Oh no. What the fuck? What the? It can summon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Why are there 9 of them? Why? What the dick? Anyway, when you summon a follower, kill it to summon an overgrown snapvine. So that's a... God, what a bastard. Okay, so... Here we have a creature that's growing out of a pot. You see that? Like, the idea here being that it's an overgrown snapvine. So this snapvine probably used to be small and harmless, as it says here. Today, another remarkable thing surfaced around blah blah. Children quite scared, but pose no threat. Nuzzled, quite a trusting creature. Must forage them more berries. It's a little shop of horrors kind of thing where you have this snapvine growing this little pot, and oh, that's cute, I'll feed it some berries, and then it starts growing a little bit too big, and then it starts growing really big, and all of a sudden, a lot of them start growing all at once, and all of a sudden you have a big problem. And that's the visual storytelling here, that it's bursting out of the little pot that it used to be confined to, like this multi-headed hydra thing, spreading its roots through the earth and bursting out in other locations as well as it spreads itself. Feed me, Seymour. Feed me all night long. 'Cause if you feed me, Seymour, I can grow up big and strong. I hope you'll indulge me a little bit of musical. Which leaves us with this one more? Oh yeah, the Terror of the Tides. So this is a very, very cool monster design. Like, I really like this as a monster design. And again, it's like the same guys. It's the same stupid idiots who were chasing around that giant sea snake earlier. It's like, no, I can still get him. I can still get him. I've got him right in my sights. But yeah, this is... I just love that it's them again. But this is a really, really fucking cool monster design. Like a sea snake, a sea serpent beast that's made up of the corpses of all the ships that it sunk. Like, where you can see it's got this boat sitting on its head with the sails acting as like a fin on the top of its face. And it's got this broken prow of an ancient dead ship, where you can even see they had this ornament on the front of the ship that was clearly like some kind of shark hunting vessel, using that as a second layer of teeth in front of its actual layer of teeth. And then you can see even more boats and ships stuck on its back as this thing like curves itself in and out. And you can even see like its open splayed ribs in the ocean. Like, oh, this is a scary motherfucker. That's a really cool monster design. And that, I think, is it. That is all of the cards, which leaves one last thing I want to look at. Just the one. Just the one. The best spell in the game. the absolute best spell in the game. I'm going to be putting this in all of my decks, no matter if I have Poros or not. Because this is the best spell. I love this spell. This is adorable. And you are wonderful, my little fuzzy friends. And I love you. It's such a bad card. Like, well, I mean, if you can get it on turn 4, if you have 3 spell mana and you can get it on turn 4, then I guess, like, having the 2 extra Poro snacks, like, it's still 13 fucking mana. And it's also, it's not clear to me whether it creates 2 random Poros in hand or on the board. It has to be in hand, right? It has to be in hand, surely. Someone says the Trail of Evidence spell. I mean, yeah, like, it's still, like I said, most of the spell cards are not that interesting as such, but you can see, like, the saturation of the color getting stronger and stronger the closer we get to the camera, and the trail of the goo itself being used to lead our eye to the Investigator, as well as just, like, the framing of the Investigator in this frame between the ground and the 2 things on the side. Same kind of general principles. Someone says the Pool Shark. Oh, yeah, your point being that the Pool Shark is the thing that's hiding in the shell? No, I don't think it is. Like, I can see why you would think so, but I think this is the Pool Shark, but the way that he cheats them is by using this ball, like this pet that he's trained to do what he wants. But this thing is still the Pool Shark. Whew. Any other cards that you'd like me to take a closer look at? Yeah, They're both Pool Sharks, that's the pun. Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. And yes, that's Twisted Fate on the poster. He's on a lot of posters. He's cheated a lot of people. Our boy. Our very good boy. Kitchen, you should have gone to your meeting, man. Please look at the level up animations for the new cards. Yeah, I mean, if I have to do that, I'm gonna have to gather them first, because I can't see them here. Like, I don't have a convenient way to just, like, trigger them and see them. You have to actually level them up in game, so it'll take me a little while to get a hold of all of them. Legends of Runeterra gameplay now. No, that's not the point of this stream, but I might do a Legends of Runeterra stream at some other point later. But for the moment, I think we are done. We have done all the cards, and I can feel my voice is slightly starting to hate me right now. I'm getting a little hoarse. So, thank you all very much for watching, all 725 of you that stuck it out until the end. This was enjoyable. I'm going to split this up into 1-hour segments, I think. I'm going to try and split it up a little bit. And then I'm going to put it on my second channel, which is Tubiesgein. You can find a link to that down in the description. And if you want to watch this and you don't want to watch like a 4.5 hour VOD, or whatever, 4 hours actually, a 4-hour VOD, then you can go over there and find it. But other than that, yeah, I need dinner. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've had a good time sitting here with me looking at almost all of the new cards in the new Legends of Runeterra Rising Tide expansion. Like I said at the start of the stream, Riot gave me a bunch of coins and a bunch of wild cards so I could unlock all the cards I wanted in the game, so full disclosure on that one. And yeah, if they release another animated short, I'll be taking a look at that one as well. And if they don't, that's completely fine with me as well, because I was almost burning out on them a little bit. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you to those of you who posted super chats and gave donations and stuff like that. That's very kind of you. And have a good night, everybody.